welcome to my podcast, and I'm thrilled that Miranda Hart has agreed to be my guest today. We have many things to discuss, from joyfulness and humour to the character of Miss Bates in Jane Austen's Emma, and to the challenges that Miranda has faced and picked up in her book, I Haven't Been Entirely Honest with You. I think we both love British humour, and it turns out that we both like galloping around the garden. There are many moments to enjoy. We are in sofas in different homes, but I hope at one point I might well be able to welcome you here, Miranda. But thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'd love to be there at Highclere Abbey, Downton Castle, whatever it's called now.
I don't know what we are.
That would be such a thrill.
Another time.
You're marvellous.
And I think that I first met you through the screen in my room here as Miranda on television. And you used to be so cheerful and cheering up and so honest as well, that I think I have 5 younger sisters. All of us used to so enjoy watching that program alone, before I've also met you through the books you've written, which I have also enjoyed.
Oh, thank you. It means so much that people still remember the sitcom. Amazing that it's still got a life, kind of 10 years on now. People are still watching it as well. But yeah, that means a lot. I suppose it was my baby, that sitcom.
If there's anything you could look back on, was there one particular series or role you played that you most enjoyed, Miranda?
It's been interesting looking back recently, as I have been with writing and things, that I realised that a lot of what I was doing sort of back then, when I was very busy doing Miranda, then Call the Midwife and things like that, was that actually it did really become a job rather than a sort of joyful thing in the moment. So I wish I could go back and kind of do it again with real presence and joy. But I think my lasting memory will always be an episode of Miranda that I did with Patricia Hodge and an actor called Mark Heap, and it was basically just 3 of us in a psychiatrist's office. And it was in series 2. And it just felt like doing a play on television. So it combined my 2 loves. And it was such an unusual day. And we did a matinee and an evening performance, which is very rare in front of a studio audience. And it just sort of connected with the audience in a way we weren't expecting. And I was never forget that day.
How amazing. Because in a sense, you are very theatrical. And I think you ad-lib some of it. I don't know how much is ad-libbing and how much is actually script written in some of that series. But it does seem as if it was you. And yet in this book here, which I do recommend, I Haven't Been Entirely Honest with You. Perhaps some of it was an acting role, even if it was more off the cuff than script driven.
Well, I'm very flattered that you say it's off the cuff, actually, because it was scripted to within
Was it?
a millimetre.
Wow.
Yes, it was very, very tight and poured over every armor and comma, and to me, that's how I do my comedy. When you're in front of an audience, you've got to get a laugh, so it's got to be really technical and really regimented. And then when you've learnt it in that way, it can then make it try and look fluid and improvised and natural. And so I'm really proud of the fact that we managed to do that, because a studio audience sitcom is quite an unusual, and the pressure of having to get a laugh. So yeah, I'm really flattered by that and intrigued. It was very much me. I wrote a lot of that at my parents' house, actually, that episode, and I was wandering around their sitting room just picking up objects and playing with it a bit, and that's what I ended up doing in the episode. I am silly and have a lot of joy, particularly in recent years, and like to subvert social convention and British polite society as much as possible. But I was able to do it in the sitcom in a way you're not really able to in real life. But so it's the clown version of me. So it was a performance, it was acting. It was very technical. And the looking to camera, I think, okay, in this shot I'm looking at camera 1, then I'm looking at camera 4. So it's really technical and hard work, but that's partly why I love it. And we were recording in a studio which was where Morecambe and Wise, my comedy heroes, filmed in at the BBC. So that just added this history of British comedy. The fact that I was performing there made me want to work harder as well. Thank you
We
for
have
asking about the sitcom. Do you know, I could talk about it all day.
we have a great heritage of British comedy, I think, which I love. And I worked for a theatrical agent in a previous life and used to go along and watch some of the
Oh.
sitcoms being filmed, which I did really enjoy. You represented Judi Dench, for example, and we'd worked with Michael Whitehall. And I used to go along to what they were doing at the BBC. Honestly, I was so lucky in that particular life of mine. And I had to go racing with people like Dan Day-Lewis. It was just terrible, honestly, Miranda. It was such a difficult job. It really was. And John Hurt. So it was wonderful.
No, that's amazing to see those shows, though. I'm glad you've had an insight into that.
I think, funnily enough, in an earlier life, I had a clothes business. And I think your mother had a clothes party for me just to let you into a little secret.
Sounds very like my mother.
Yes.
And she would have wanted me to have clothes parties and go to clothes parties. I'm afraid, and the aforementioned subverting of society, I wanted to just roll in mud. And I do walk around naked. My poor mother, she tried her best.
But in the end, I and my sister sometimes might gallop along the street thinking we are Miranda, just to let you know, because you do all the things that we'd like to do. And then we try to find your courage to do them, which I think is very interesting.
We're all different, aren't we? Some of us love fashion and makeup and looking. It's important to look good. And some of us, like me, are grungy and
I don't think so at all.
But all of us need a gallop at some point to just that sense of freedom. Take all the cares and the worries and the conventions off us. The rules, no rules.
Well, you'll come to a book club and we might have to gallop in together. If nothing else.
Oh, please, can we
gallop
around Highclere Castle? I mean, gallop outside with a horse walking beside us.
Absolutely.
So the horse is walking. I mean, I think we need to do at least a 2-week shoot on this.
No, but you're so technically perfect. It would be fine.
Definitely. It would be fine. I think it's going to go viral. Okay, it's a date.
Funnily enough, Miranda, one of the roles I really enjoyed was when you played Miss Bates in Emma in Jane Austen, because I think it's an extraordinary character. I think Jane Austen just completely caught the slightly sad spinster who is dependent on other people. And I just thought that was very moving, actually. I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, but I did really admire that particular characterization and the sensitivity that she did it.
Thank you. That means a lot. As you mentioned earlier, was I playing a character in Miranda, or was I hiding stuff with having my book talking about having had ME? And actually, in filming Emma, it was hard. I wasn't particularly well there. I still didn't know quite why. So going to work was very, very difficult doing on filming days. So I'm proud of the fact that I managed to do it and that people liked it. But interestingly, it helped me harness her vulnerability and sensitivity, I think, because I was beginning to feel so vulnerable, which I'd never really felt before. I also think, a bit like Miranda, just in a different way, it's important to connect with an audience and play characters that do feel left out or don't quite fit in or don't feel they're included or part of something and make social mishaps, all that. Jane Austen, in many ways, was the first sort of female comedian to kind of highlight those observations. I think she's a beautiful character. I remember doing the picnic scene. That's such an important scene for Emma, because if Miss Bates gets hurt and the audience believe that she's really hurt, then it's what sort of goes on to develop Emma and Mr. Knightley's relationship. That's the most nervous I've ever been on set, was doing that. I think it was the second take, and the director and producer came out in floods of tears, and I was like, yes, I got them. I've done it. I was so relieved. So interesting playing that, because I'd felt really very unwell then. So I felt very aligned to Miss Bates and our vulnerability.
For those people who haven't read Miranda's book, what's really interesting is it's a completely different approach to writing about the challenges you face in your division of the book into 3 sections, and also the way you interweave a treasure into each of the sections that you're writing about, which is, I suppose, very Miranda. It's completely different from perhaps how anyone else might have written it. Did you have a clear idea of what you were going to write before you wrote this book, how you were going to structure it?
Yeah, I think I did know it, because I didn't really want to write it. But I was researching as I was feeling unwell and not getting answers and just very fatigued, then became housebound and bedbound with it. I thought, well, there's all this sort of discourse and awareness of holistic well-being, which is wonderful. But in my sort of crisis point, I was like, I don't know actually what's going to help me. I can't go on a mini break and go to a spa, or I can't do an ice bath, or what actually helps. So I researched it for myself, not thinking it would be a book. And then for me, as I came across, I started calling them my treasures, because there's a phrase, I think it's in a psalm in the Bible, where it says the treasures of darkness. And I really hooked onto that, because I thought it is in our darknesses and in our worst moments that often we learn exactly what we need to do. Not that I wish suffering on anyone. So I really hooked onto the word treasures, and I thought, yeah, that's what they feel like. And so in my research, I just found these 10 treasures that each day I just needed to use to kind of keep me going. And they helped a little get physically better as well. Not that I'm fully out of it. So then I thought, well, I can't keep these treasures to myself. I'm going to have to blooming write a book. So I did. And I'm just very, very glad that it's resonated with people.
And I spend a lot of time when I'm writing with both the dedication and with the acknowledgements. And I read that you also read the acknowledgements. I've dedicated my books usually to my husband, because I'm living with him, so you might be cross if I didn't. So that's that. My sisters, because I love them, who haven't read my books, I would suspect. And my son, who probably might have listened to some, but not if I've read them, because he doesn't want to listen to his mother's. So my dedications sort of fall. Then the acknowledgements at the end, I just have some fun with. I also read that you also read acknowledgements, and the lovely part of your acknowledgements was about your 50th birthday party, when you asked your friends to describe you. The best one, which I love, was, I think you said that one person described you as windy, which I thought was just fantastic.
It was my sister's idea, I think, and she was like, let's just get a word each and describe why we think that's her. Initially, I was really embarrassed, because weirdly, I don't like being the centre of attention in that way. But I just thought, just relax into it. I don't think I'm ever going to feel this loved, potentially, so beautiful. So everyone was doing really nice things and quite earnest things. Someone went, well, my word is flatulent. Great. And then about an hour later, I went, by the way, that was the best gift I've ever had. Thank you to all my friends. But I said, can I fall with what a single person said I was funny? And they were like, taken for granted, taken as read. I was like, still not a single one. So just, dealing with that. But yes, flatulent.
Windy and breezy are sort of words in my sister, who have lots of bad words to describe me, I think. So I'd ever ask them for words to describe me. They'd be far too honest. But I think you're right. Out of dark moments, you actually do find strengths. But nevertheless, Miranda, it must have been so difficult sometimes to keep going when people don't believe you. I think that's one of the hardest things, isn't it? When people don't believe you and just sort of tell you to get on and don't want to help you find out how to get better. And it must have been probably a huge relief when you began to find your path through the garden of darkness, if you like. But that probably took years, didn't it?
It was really hard. And I think they call it chronic invisible illness now for a reason, because so many conditions, I think of pain particularly, but ME, chronic fatigue, long COVID, long whatever viral infection, which is essentially what ME is. If you keep saying I'm tired all the time, everyone's tired. So they don't have a reference for actually what fatigue is. And fatigue is more, I can't pick up the glass of water in front of me type level of fatigue. But it is hidden, because you do find the way to pick it up, and you can still look quite well. So the loneliness of that is very real, I think, to many people. And there are millions suffering with chronic problems. Some cancers, of course, are invisible too, aren't they? If people are living with it. It's really hard. And then you feel like I had to really undo the British pattern of keep calm and carry on and stop moaning. And, because I ended up sort of isolating myself, because I felt like I couldn't just go, oh, I'm feeling terrible again, or sorry, I can't calm. It was better to sort of disappear. But now, one of the greatest treasures for me from the darkness was being able to be how I am and how I feel, but still with people, or still going to do a small job or whatever it is, but being able to say, oh, by the way, I just need 5 minutes, or, I need a nap, or I'm just going to be quiet for a bit, or meeting my needs in that way felt very vulnerable to start with now, and now it just feels second nature, which is great. So I can live with the condition much better.
I'm sure you've helped many other people as a result.
I hope so. I don't know. I think there are some universals to chronic health conditions, but at the same time, everybody's experience is different. Everything in the book came from research, so it's not just nice ideas that I came up with whilst in my bed. I hated that would not have published. That would have just been laugh at a fart or something, stroke a dog continuously, both of which I adhered to, but they were science, evidence-based.
I've realised somebody asked me some questions. Did the process of writing change how you feel about yourself? Which I thought was quite an interesting question. Or is it too...
No, that's a very good question. And I would say yes, actually, collating all the material and the research and writing it sort of in my voice and then writing my story within it. I sort of had a lot of grief when I did it because I suddenly realised what I'd been through. So I was able to acknowledge it. And then I talk a lot about identity and how being ill for so long stripped me of all the main measurements of identity that we normally have, like your job or relationships or friendships. Or I lost my house at one point. So I was being ill for so long, I really had to think about who I was beyond all that. That really came out in the writing. I just sorted out what the meaning of life was, basically. For everybody, you're welcome. No, but I had to really sit with who I was beyond being famous or beyond being an actress or beyond having a job or beyond being social, whatever it was. And so that was a really interesting process and really helped me. And I feel like I've come out the other end knowing who I am in a way that I didn't realise I didn't know myself as well and didn't realise I needed.
I'm one of 6 girls, as I mentioned, and our father died very young. My number 6 sister was 12. And everything went pear-shaped in our life, from being quite lucky and privileged and fortunate to being completely in a maelstrom of everything. And there was a very good line from Houseman about I, a stranger and afraid, in a world I never made. And it was that black helplessness of King Lear, which I used to sort of turn around in my head and then find it very hard to figure out how to climb out of. I think sometimes reading about other people, and it's the same, we're all trying to climb out sometimes of a pit of despair. It does sort of help, but I do remember that search for anything really, which is, and also not something that was talked about, because this was some time ago now, Miranda, and it's just you're kind of lost in the bottomless pit. But just finally, there was a question here, which I think we've answered many of them, but it was, as public figures, do you think you have a duty to be honest about some of your personal life? Because that's an interesting boundary, isn't it, about where you step forward and how much you share.
It's really interesting. And one of the things I learned over the last 10 years, one of my treasures of discovery about myself, was that I was actually an introvert. And so I can be loud and silly and be the centre of attention to the party occasionally, but actually, ultimately, to recover, I need a lot of time on my own and silence and stillness. As a natural introvert, my instinct is to eat in private, and I don't actually like being that nasty word celebrity or anything like that. But at the same time, I happen to have become famous. I didn't choose it. I wasn't expecting my show to do what it did. So yes, you've then got to go, okay, what is there a reason for that, or is there greater purpose and greater meaning beyond that? And maybe I analyse that too much and think about it too much, but to that extent, I do think there's a bit of a duty to it. So I keep my private life as private as I can and just share what I want to. But I did feel a real duty with this book, actually, to share what I'd learned. I just thought, I often think, what would I do on my deathbed? Would I regret not sharing this? And the answer was always yes, so that was that. But the real, in many ways, I would have rather not shared. I don't know. No, that's not true, actually. That's not true. I'm glad I did. But it did feel like a duty.
What do you look to next? What would keep you excited? What would give you that joy that you talked about that you sometimes lacked? Oh, puppies, of course.
Sorry about the dogs. Patty's off. Patty, shush. Don't ruin our very important podcast, please. And I do find joy now in every day. That was the biggest treasure of darkness is finding my joy. True joy, not happiness based on circumstances, but just looking at a tree, cuddling the dog, etc. And what I'm really looking forward to is finding a house with my husband, because we've yet to find our married home together.
Okay.
We're renting at the moment, and I'm really looking forward to that, putting down roots with him and kind of starting my life proper with him, and having a place where people can come and rest and play and get away from the world. And yeah, that's my big project, big aim.
Miranda, if you were coming to a summer garden party here with strawberries and champagne and Labrador dogs and a little white pony to gallop with, who would you like to bring as your guest?
What I'd like to bring, what a lovely notion, by the way. Can be
Dead or alive? Who would
question.
you like to bring to be a friend of Highclere?
I would like to bring Eric Morecambe.
Oh my God,
with
I
me,
love
my
him.
comedy hero. Wouldn't it be so fun to have him at Highclere and all that he'd do with his pipe in his mouth as he wanders around making us all laugh?
I would love that.
Yes, please, Eric Morecambe.
Eric Morecambe it is. Thank you so much. I was brought up with the Morecambe and Wise, the two Ronnies. Oh, golly, what fun.
Oh, the two Ronnies as well, yeah.
Oh, Full Candles. Do you know,
Brilliant.
when we interview people for jobs here, I tend to say, have you seen Full Candles? Because it sort of shows me the sort of person they are. And I can't thank you enough for joining me, despite being in separate places and not feeling in the best of health. So thank you so much for taking the time out.
Pleasure. Well, maybe it was lucky we weren't in the same room, considering I'm flatulent and windy. It's all worked out for the best.
You are amazing. Oh dear, I think all of my sisters were always, I'm afraid, always talking about who's farted and who's burped. So we're completely uncouth, really. We just have this front which looks more demure, as Lady Grantham or not.
I think most of us love talking about farting and burping, don't we? Really? So I've got a few friends who find it abhorrent and say they don't fart, which I don't believe. But I think people secretly love it.
All 6 of us were together for my number 5 sister's 50th birthday about 10 days ago. And basically the conversation within a second turns to farting and burping. But I think that's very important. And we used to gallop around the garden on hobby horses. So we're fine and perfectly moronically stupid. The bizarre thing is my sister Penny's children are girls, and they also like galloping around the garden and jumping over jumps. So it's just quite scary how it's genetic.
Oh, I love it. We are firm friends, clearly.
Not at all. Miranda, thank you so much for joining me. And you're really kind to do this when you're not feeling great. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure, and I hope you might come and gallop here. We can do a book club about your book when you feel a bit better. And I think it'd be lovely. I've got a little white pony who can walk beside us and we can gallop. I think it would be a winner. Your book would go viral.
It'd be just wonderful. Please,
no, definitely.
Do that. I'm going to.
That's a date.
Be as calm and patient with you to get better for that.
Definitely. Thank you, Miranda.
Yeah.
Bye.